You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
And what that means is that it means that fans have a chance to be involved with the process. It means that fans have the chance to engage with creators. And so we think that because of that, we can develop higher quality stuff, But aside from that, the real advantage comes that when we go to release a movie or a television show or a VR adventure, we have a legion of fans that are already invested and are behind it.
Hey everyone, thanks again for hitting that play button. This is the Dave Bullis Podcast, and I am your host, Dave Bullis. Before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who was supporting me in the Midnight Screenwriting Competition. I actually handed my submission in. It wasn't spectacular, but I at least hope make it to the second round. I want to say thank you to Michael Johnson and Michael K. Snyder for their help, as giving me feedback for the script. Because, I had a week to write up to 12 pages. If I make it to the second round, I think it's, I have 5 days to write up to 8 pages. I want to say thank you to both of them for, allowing me to send the script and bounce ideas off of them. You may remember Michael K. Snyder because he was the first ever guest I had on here. So for those of you that have been listening since episode 1, he was the first ever guest I ever actually had. And he's actually writing a guest post right now for my blog about moving out to LA, which I think will be helpful to a lot of people who are just thinking about making that journey. He actually talks about a lot of the pitfalls to avoid and just gives you a lot of tips and stuff. And I'm hoping to have him back on the podcast soon. By the way, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can now do it on the Google Play Podcast app. In the Google Play Store, they actually have a podcast option now, and you can actually subscribe to the Dave Bullis Podcast through Google Play. So it's been up for a few weeks. I just forgot to mention it. So again, the show is also on Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. And if you're thinking about starting your own podcast, please check out my Podbean affiliate link. The coupon code is Dave Bullis Podcast. We get credit for that, which again will help the podcast out. If you are thinking about starting your own podcast, shoot me a tweet, shoot me an email, and I want to talk to you about it. If you use my affiliate link, I will just help you completely free. I'm not selling you anything because you're going to need a host anyway, right? So, meaning you're a podcast host to store your audio on. Not actually me, of course. But, if you actually do use my affiliate link, please shoot me an email, or even if you're thinking about starting your podcast, and I will help you out. I'll tell you what mics I use. I will tell you some of those things that I've avoided, and I will just tell you little other tips and tricks, and I'll try to help you out as much as I can. Also, on May the 26th, the Sledgehammer and the Zen Master 3. It's going to be us doing the same blob that we did I think it was in March or April. If you want to feature your current Indiegogo campaign, shoot me an email and send me the link to it. We're going to be doing about 2 or 3 of them this time around. And again, that won't be till May the 26th of 2016. So please make sure your crowdfunding campaign is actually active at that time, because that way we can give you some feedback, and that way you can do some adjustments, and hopefully you can make your crowdfunding campaign a success. As far as what I'm up to, I'm still working on my McKee seminar write-up. I actually was just talking to a friend of mine about that. I hope to have that done by the time you're listening to this, and I'm just going to tell you exactly what I learned. I'm going to tell you exactly what each day entailed. Oddly enough, I just started the James Patterson online masterclass. It's basically about writing novels, and James goes through his whole writing process. And, I was pretty intrigued about that, and I'm going to be doing a write-up about that as well. And just going through about what I've learned and, just exactly what the course entails. People seem to like this idea, so as long as you keep, sending me some positive feedback on it, I'll keep doing it. And speaking of that, on this week's episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast, our guest is the co-founder of Legion M, the world's first owned entertainment company. He's also the co-founder and CEO of New York Rock Exchange, co-founder and CEO of Underground Labs, and he was a co-founder of MobiTV. MobiTV, if you remember when cell phones were starting to get TV on them, that was the guy that was responsible for that. Because I used to manage a bunch of Verizon wirelesses, and I remember when TV first appeared on cell phones and the screen was tiny as hell. And I mean, now, they're a great size to watch something on. I mean, granted, though, if you're going to watch a movie, if you have an option, always watch it on your TV in the best possible way with sound and everything else. That's where you really get immersed in a movie. But I digress. But here we go, episode 109 with guest Jeff Annison.
listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, Jeff. And, Jeff, you're one of the co-founders of Legion M, which is one of the first ever, fan-backed studios. And, I wanted to ask, more, about your background. So, Jeff, did you growing up, did you have a love affair for films growing up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always loved movies and entertainment in general. When I went to college at UCLA and I went in pursuing a degree in mechanical engineering, and I came like this close, like within a hair's breadth of changing my major to screenwriting, just because I love the whole film industry. I love storytelling. And I had what I think in retrospect was probably the good sense at the time to recognize that I could always be a mechanical engineer and screenwrite on the side. And it was a lot more difficult to do the reverse. And so I stuck with it, but I've always been a fan. I've always had the bug.
I always wanted to ask that because I actually do know somebody who created their own studio as well. And he never really was into movies growing up. You know what I mean? And he actually ended up starting his own studio at like 38, 39. And he actually launched it. And he actually lives up the street from me. I am meaning to have him on the show, but I always just, find it interesting with everyone's background because everyone has a different background. Sometimes, people follow one path and then they realize that's not the answer. And then they sort of, call an audible and then they do something completely different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. I saw a post on Facebook that was talking about how, in 10,000 hours, you can become an expert in something, right? That's one of the theories.
Yeah.
10,000 hours is about a decade worth of your career, right? And so, the whole point of this post is, people say you only live once, but I mean, the fact is you can reinvent yourself every decade and become an expert in a whole new area. And so I love that philosophy. I've always had a lot of different interests. I've had a lot of different jobs in a lot of different sectors. And to me, I think that it's just spectacular to be able to take a step back. Even I'm 44 right now and do something that's completely novel.
I've always been very interested in the 10,000 hour rule because I heard about it years and years ago. Funny enough, from a Kung Fu grandmaster, and he actually was talking about the 10,000 hour rule. And I mean, this was probably 2001 or 2. Later on, I heard of it through Malcolm Gladwell,
yep.
And now that's sort of been like a topic of a lot of podcasts I listen to. That 10,000 hour rule, that it will literally take you 10,000 hours. So of course, Jeff, being, in the film, industry, I immediately went to screenwriting with it. And I said, okay, so it's going to take a decade to actually become an expert in screenwriting.
Yeah. Unless you're a prodigy, I'm sure there's people out there that have never done it. They pick up a pen, and write the great American screenplay. But, that's not me, at least not so far.
I heard James Patterson once say that it took him 1 million words. He had to write 1 million words before he could write his first novel. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. That is really interesting.
Well, enough about that. I want to talk about you, Jeff. Jeff, I wanted to ask, you started Legion M, and I wanted to ask you, what was the road like for you to actually start Legion M? And I mean, I wanted to hear also, what was the impetus to actually start Legion M?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I feel very fortunate. I feel like this is the sort of thing that everything in my life has led up to this point. As we discussed, I've been a fan of filmmaking and Hollywood and the entertainment industry since my college years. My first job out of college was actually working on theme park rides. I was an engineer that worked on Jurassic Park, the ride in Universal Studios. But, about 13 years ago, oh, actually, wait, it's longer than that. I'm a little embarrassed. I guess it's 17 years ago. It's time is flying by, but I hooked up with Paul Scanlon, who is my co-founder of this company. And together, he and I and one other gentleman by the name of Philip Alvelda, we started a company that it had a different name when we first founded it, but it became MobiTV. And we were the first ones in the world to launch live television on your cell phone back in 2003. And so, this was a thing like back then. And again, you got to put it in context. 2003, the screens were tiny. It was just when color screens were coming out. It was just when we were making this transition from alphanumeric displays to, full pixelated displays. And we had so many people, including, real big wigs in the entertainment industry, tell us, you guys are absolutely insane. Like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Nobody's ever going to want to watch television, let alone a movie on their cell phone. And so, it's kind of funny because obviously time proved otherwise. And we actually won an Emmy Award a couple of years later, which was very fulfilling after having so many doors slammed in our faces, and then to be able to come back a couple of years later and win an Emmy for innovation in television. But so, that really gave us a lot of exposure to Hollywood, and it gave us a lot of connections in television networks. We started off by licensing other people's networks. We had like NBC and ABC News and that sort of stuff. And then eventually we started creating our own networks, right? We'd buy the content directly and create our own programming blocks so that we could create our own channels. And so, that really kind of got us into the entertainment space. We were technologists that invented this really cool technology, and we got into the entertainment space, and, that opened up a lot of doors for us. Then flash forward a couple of years later, I created with Paul again a company called the New York Rock Exchange that worked with music artists, to sell shares of their songs to fans. And the idea was really simple. If I'm a fan of the Beatles, being able to own a little piece of the Beatles, right? To own a piece of that song is extremely compelling. And at the time, the Jobs Act didn't exist. And so there wasn't a way to actually make it so that you owned and participated financially in the music. But we figured out a way that allowed us to transfer the copyright to you without transferring any of the financial part. So you literally became a part owner of the song. It's a lot like what the Green Bay Packers have done for their football team. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and so that really gave us kind of this firsthand opportunity to witness the magic that when you've got creators coming together with fans, how powerful that can be on both sides of the equation. And so, the Jobs Act passed in 2012, that it really revolutionized security law for early stage financing. And I don't know if you're interested in going that. I'd love to talk about that a little bit and what that means to people. But anyway, the bottom line is that, the Jobs Act just now, the final stages of it are being implemented or have been implemented. And so, this is an idea that has been brewing kind of our whole life. What if fans could own a movie studio or a production company and participate, right? So that when we release these movies, you helped fund it, you helped make it happen. You've been along every step of the way, engaging with creators throughout the process, and you were there on day one. And you got to, see a live stream from the set and talk with the directors and all that sort of stuff. And, when this movie comes out, if this movie becomes a hit, you actually participate in it. You participate in the upside. And so, it's an idea that's time has come. And, we're just fortunate enough to be in the right place and the right time in history that it first became possible.
It's funny you talk about having TV on your cell phone. I actually used to manage a couple of Verizon wirelesses, and I was, and I remember, I think it wasn't the Sidekick. I remember the phone, it would actually flip into like a T. And yes, that was the phone that was like the first ever phone where you could actually watch TV in a proper pixel and aspect ratio. This is around like 2006.
Yes.
And I remember when this came out, and I was like, wow. I was like, this actually doesn't look that bad. And now, I mean, flash forward to now, I mean, my God, the clarity is freaking unreal, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's absolutely incredible. It's kind of funny now, but when we launched live TV on your cell phone, and you can't see it because it's a podcast, but I'm using air quotes here, live TV on your cell phone, it was live television, meaning that if you were watching Discovery Channel on your phone and you turned on Discovery Channel on your cable, like you saw the exact same feed. But the quality was so poor by today's standards, right? It was one frame every maybe second or two. And what we found was that, totally did not work for basketball or baseball or something where there's a lot of quick action because the frame rate was just too low. But for a lot of content, if you're watching Mythbusters, if you're watching, CNBC or a talking head news show, like it worked great. And as long as you had seamless audio, it was a very compelling experience kind of, even back there in those early days. But now my kids, honestly, if they were going to watch Jurassic World, they're just as likely to watch it on their cell phone, as they are to watch it on a big TV, which is, the whole thing is just kind of ironic.
I was at a seminar one time and the speaker brought that up. He said, if you are going to create a web series and, throw it on YouTube, he said, the kids today are going to watch it on their phone or their iPad rather than an actual TV. And, he said he took his daughter to college and she didn't even want a TV because she either used her computer screen or her laptop.
Yeah. No, it's really true. It's really true. The whole entertainment world is in such a state of, disruption and upheaval. And in music, it's actually a real challenge because, so many of the business models, the financial models that have powered the music industry for so long are changing in a way that makes it very difficult. But in television, it's actually a little bit the reverse. I mean, there's some people I'm sure that are losing, but there's so many, we're like in a golden age of television, right? Because there's more places that you can watch it. There's more avenues for creators to sell their content. You look at like 10 or 15 years ago, I mean, you could sell it to a television network and that was it. Now you've got Amazon, you've got Netflix, you've got YouTube, you've got all these new SVOD services that are launching, where you pay like $4 or $5 and you get, a small selection of channels. So it's really an interesting and exciting time. And that's just on the television front. On the other side, there's also virtual reality and augmented reality and these whole new frontiers of storytelling, which, I don't know how much you've seen of the VR stuff, but there's a lot of people that are betting a lot of money that this is truly going to revolutionize entertainment. And, 10 years from now, virtual reality headsets are going to do to television and, kind of content and that sort of thing, the same thing that like iPhone did to, flip phones.
It's funny because there was that old saying, whatever happens to the movie business, happens to the music industry will happen to the movie industry, because you saw, the music industry is the first one that dealt with piracy.
Yes.
Then they dealt with this influx of, how do you price a digital product? And then, now, what it's going through now in terms of, like we were just talking about with the distribution of movies and everything else. And there was a music producer on I think it was on Howard Stern. And he actually said he was waiting for the day where music was just given away for free. But here's the catch. It would be given away for free with like, a pair of Beats headphones. So you'd buy like, a pair of headphones or you'd buy a new speaker system and, hey, look, you're going to get this CD or you're going to get a, gift card to Tidal or Google Play Store or Google Play Music, something like that. I mean, I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. I'm just saying it's interesting how this is all in flux right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a brave new world. And it's really interesting because, I think that because music bore the brunt of the, music was kind of the first wave, if you will, just because of the file sizes, that TV has had, they've got foresight, right? Like they can see what's going to happen. And it's just, they've been able to adapt better. And I think that's part of it. I also think that there's kind of fundamental differences to the way that we listen to music and the way that we value music and that sort of stuff. It's, one of the things that's so interesting on both, I'd say, music as well as video content is we live in this golden age of production, right? Because, now you can do with a laptop. If you're an independent musician, you can do it all yourself, right? You can record it yourself at very high quality. You can distribute it yourself. You can monetize it yourself. You can have people literally on the other side of the world that's listening to your music. And so I think that it's really, revolutionary as far as that goes. And it allows so many people to participate in it. The hard part, of course, is the cost model. Like, how can you, it's fine for people that are music hobbyists and, want to just do it for the art of it. But if you're trying to make a career making music or, being a YouTube star or, podcasts or whatever, I think that stuff is just as challenging as it's ever been. But it's the movie and television guys, I think, have, for whatever reason, been able to figure it out a little bit better than music was. I
concur. And like I said, I think the file size has a lot to do with it as well. Because, back, when all the piracy started, file sizes for movies were, if it was like a gig, you were like, screw this.
Yeah.
I can't, I got a 56K modem here. I can't download that. It's going to take me all night.
That's right. That's right.
So, speaking again about, Legion M, you had some really cool partners sign up. And one of them was, of course, Meltdown Comics, which I saw. How were you able, sort of to approach them to get them to join Legion M?
It's a great question. Earlier when I said that I felt like everything had kind of led up to this point, it just happened to be that a couple months before we founded Legion M, I was introduced to Gaston, the CEO, the guy that's been running Meltdown Comics for the past 20 years, and as well as all of the businesses. If your listeners are not familiar with Meltdown Comics, it's truly an amazing place because, on the surface, it's a mom and pop comic book store, that's been on Sunset Boulevard. Like I said, I think it's 20 years. I don't know what the exact dates are, but and they sell comic books and collectibles and all that sort of stuff. But they also have a comedy club there that they do there's like underground comedy. It's like one of the hippest underground comedy clubs in Los Angeles. I was there on like a Wednesday night, just hanging out and checking out the show, and unannounced Zach Galifianakis and Sarah Silverman just dropped by so that they could try out some new material. It's an amazing venue. They film at least one TV show out of there now, which is The Meltdown with Jonah and Kumail, which is on Comedy Central. They film that out of the back, but they're always doing, I think last year they filmed like 27 pilots out of the back of Meltdown Comics. They also have a tech incubator that's there where they've got a number of really cool emerging startup companies. XSN.com is one, which is kind of like a home shopping network for really cool content. You go and it's hilarious because they've got kind of the QVC sort of format where you've got a host that's talking about what the product is, but the product isn't, some lame QVC stuff. It's like, handmade Jedi robes, by a guy that is explaining how he's faithful to the screen representations of these artifacts, or, homemade jewelry from Lord of the Rings. It's really cool, interesting, just totally nerdy stuff. Anyway, so all this stuff is happening. They've got like it's like Meltdown University or something like that, where they've got artists that are coming in and they're teaching class on how to draw comics and how to create comic books, and both for kids as well as for adults. It's an amazing place. It's like a community. It's more than anything else. Like, it's a store, but it's like Cheers, where you walk in and everybody knows your name, and these guys are over here creating some amazing thing. And The Nerdist was born with Chris Hardwick, and The Nerdist was born out of Meltdown. So it's really amazing place. But to get back to your question, I got introduced to Gaston a couple weeks, or probably a couple months before we launched Legion M. And as the Legion M plan started to come together, it's like it was just perfect timing. And we went and talked to Gaston. They've got so many cool things coming through there, from a movie studio kind of / production company, which is technically what we are. It's a great place to just have your, finger on the pulse of pop culture. Comic books are such an important part of the movie industry today. And, there's new comic books coming out every time. There's, old back catalog comic books that have followings. And so, we see that as a real opportunity for us to, snatch up some IPs, snatch up some properties that we could potentially turn into television or movies or virtual reality experiences or whatever.
And that's amazing. They actually do that, because I wanted to see more, local shops sort of build into that, if you know what I mean. Like, like you said, it seems like a mom and pop business, but then they've got all this wonderful stuff going on. And I'm sure that, obviously they built that up over time, because it's been there since 92, 93.
Yeah.
So, they've built that up just over time. Now, granted, the location's amazing because they're in downtown LA. So, there's a lot of celebrities, they can talk to. It's just great, that they could actually build that up.
It is. I think, to be honest, I think most comic book shops these days are mom and pop sort of shops. And I can tell you, at least from what I've seen, I don't think anybody's in a comic book shop because of the money, right? It's just, it's a little bit of a relic, from a previous time. But I think that you're right. I think the proximity that they have to Hollywood, and the fact that a lot of Hollywood stars are nerds, right? And a lot of these guys love comic book shops, and Meltdown is a great place to go. But a lot of it is also, it's just driven by Gaston. Like, he's an amazingly creative guy. We could probably talk for hours about all the different projects that he's involved with and all the amazing things that he's done. And he really views his job as creating a community. I'd be very surprised if Meltdown Comics makes money on comics. I think it's really, I think it's a passion project for him. And I think that it probably leads to a lot of other things, like Legion M and a lot of the other initiatives that come out or go through Meltdown.
It's kind of funny, Jeff, because almost how we were talking about how, the music and, the film industry and TV industry have all changed. I think so has entrepreneurship in a lot of ways too, because, just like you were saying, Meltdown, maybe they don't make money on comics, but they make money in, a variety of different ways. Somebody once told me, who was he's a disciple of Tony Robbins. He once told me that if you want to be a millionaire, you have to have 7 different income revenues. I'm sorry. And he said that is how millionaires become millionaires, because, most of the time that first revenue stream might not actually give you anything. The second one might not give you anything, but it might actually pump something into the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good way to look at it. And I think that it's, it is smart, right? In my career, like, if I look back at my career and look at where I was, like, as a young guy leaving college, for example, when I, started my career, there's no way I could have ever predicted where I would be today. And I think that if you take the long view on these things and you develop relationships, all the stuff, like, it just takes time. Like, you have to open yourself to serendipity. And, the people that I'm working with today, some of them are people that honestly I've known forever, and it's just like, oh, hey, I finally have an opportunity. Like, I finally got a good reason to call you, about something. And I think that's, I think it's really smart. And yeah, I can't think of a better example of it than Meltdown as a place, for somebody to do that.
So, Jeff, there's a question I have to ask, as we're going forward. And that question is, and, it did come in, by the way, as I sent out a tweet, and basically is, if somebody did want to actually pitch Legion M a project, is there a way to do that? Or is it sort of, kind of closed for right now? Maybe it'll open up later on down the road.
Well, it's closed for right now. We hope to open it up down the road. And it's not because we don't want to hear people's submissions. It's honestly, we just don't have the people to do it. We do have on our website right now, there's a submissions tab. And if you go there, you can sign up to get an alert when we open, up for submissions. And, there's just a lot that goes to receiving submissions, to making sure that all the submissions are read and considered, and making sure that we're covered legally, and you're covered legally. Like, everybody understands what's going to happen here, if you submit your project. And like I said, we honestly just don't have the staff right now. We're only 2 months old. We launched the company 2 months ago. And so we absolutely want to find ways to engage the community of creators. And we think that the shareholders of Legion M are going to be one of our most valuable assets as far as going out. And whether it's, soliciting people's, say, screenplays for a screenplay competition, or looking for ideas from people because we've got a new project that we want to do and just opening it wide open for submissions, from having the Legion help us identify up and coming talent, right? I mean, if you think about it, one of the most challenging things for a production company, one of the keys for a production company is identifying new emerging properties, whether it's a book or a comic book or a YouTube creator, a podcast, a personality, anything like that. Finding those people, and those IPs when they're small. And then going out and negotiating the rights and seeing the potential and then turning it into something that's massive. And so if you're a production company, you're looking for data. You're like, what are people watching? What are people listening to? What's going to be the next big thing? And we think that, the fact that we've got literally a legion of shareholders, we've got a huge competitive advantage because we can say, hey guys, what are you guys watching? What are you listening to? What's the next big thing? And get that data directly from our fans. So anyway, we really want to tap into that. We also want to set up like job boards, for example, so that if you've got a particular skill, whether it be graphic design or photography or sound editing or whatever, there's ways for people in the Legion that are working on their own projects to kind of, contact each other. We'd love to set up stuff like that. We'd love to even have people, a lot of people have reached out to us saying, hey, I've got this skill. I want to contribute. Like, I'm not looking for a job, but I would love to help you guys with this or that. And we'd love to be able to tap into that as well. So it's all on the roadmap. It's all something that we want to do. But at the moment, the best that you could do is go to the submissions tab, put in your information. And then once we open up a more formal submissions process, we'll reach out and contact you.
I definitely hear you on that point, because I know you're only 2 months old, and I know you're probably got a million things on your plate. It's funny because when I about 2 episodes ago, I had on the Asylum, David Latt, excuse me. He's one of the founders of the Asylum, who do all the movies for the Sci-Fi Channel and Sharknado and all that stuff. And that was the number one question that came in for him: how the hell do I pitch to the Asylum? Yeah. So the question's gonna come up. So I figure, we might as well just take that bullet right now.
Absolutely.
But Legion M, to me, you mentioned finding IPs, because to me, when I was reading more about Legion M, I was going to ask, about graphic novels, because I was going to ask, is that another route that Legion M was going to take, which would be, finding the, appropriate graphic novels to turn into films. Or even TV series.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, this is where our relationship with Meltdown, I think, is potentially very valuable. We've already had conversations with a very well-known, I can't reveal any of the details of the stuff yet, because it's not a done deal and we're just talking at this point, and I don't want to, divulge anything. But, we've talked with, a very well-known comic book writer that's got a, very well-respected comic and about a project to turn that into a television series. But yeah, I mean, definitely for films, for television series, we see graphic novels as a good starting point for a lot of these. We're not explicitly in kind of the business of saying, hey, we're going to produce graphic novels or something like that. Although, to be honest, I could see that potentially evolving as in the future. If there's an opportunity, if we're working on a property, a lot of the smart people, to go back to your 7 revenue stream sort of idea, a lot of the smart ways to monetize these properties is to build out kind of the whole world around them, right? So it's not necessarily just like, hey, what's the movie going to be? But, is there a comic book, that's going to go along with it, or an iPhone game? Or T-shirts, and all that sort of stuff. And so absolutely, we think that that's, a big part of our future.
I had a friend of mine, he was a producer, and he was very big into transmedia projects. So what he would do is he would try to find graphic novels that he could turn into TV shows or movies, and then sort of take it to another level where, like, okay, you want the third piece of this would be like a video game, or, you know, I mean, now you could, like we were saying before about VR, I mean, you know, there would be that whole element to add as well. But, you know, just thinking out loud right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, you know, that sounds, you know, amazing. And again, you know, that partnership with Meltdown Comics, you're absolutely right, would feed right into that, because they could, you know, they could actually say, you know, hey, Jeff, this new comic is by, you know, an independent artist or what have you. He crowdfunded this comic on Kickstarter, and then, you know, he made it, and, you know, he's, you know, looking to store it. You know, this would make a great movie or TV show. You know, that is a great relationship to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, you know, Jeff, I know you're busy and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So, you know, in closing, you know, of talking about Legion M, is there anything that maybe we didn't know, or anything that maybe you wanted to sort of say about Legion M that we didn't get a chance to discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we are the first company in history, you know, the first entertainment company to be owned by fans. And you can go now and literally invest and become a part of Legion M. I assume there's some, you just need to go to wefunder.com. I don't know what the actual URL is. If you just go to our website, go to thelegionm.com, you'll see some buttons there and some links that will take you to the place where we've got all of the detailed information about what it means to become a part of Legion M. It explains all the terms of the offering. It explains, you know, what the investment minimums are and what the maximums are. It explains, you know, our business model and how we plan to make money. There's information about our team and our financials and all that sort of stuff. And so it's the sort of thing you can look at it. If you're interested and want to be a part of it, that's wonderful. And this is the first time in history that regular people have the opportunity to invest and be a part of something like this. Before now, the only people that were allowed to invest in early stage companies like this were what are called accredited investors, which basically means, like, you know, extremely wealthy individuals and venture capitalists. It was something like the top 3% of the population would have legally the opportunity to invest in something like this. Now those laws have changed, like just recently within the past week. And so now for the first time in history, you can come in, and if it's something that you think is interesting, you can be a part of it. And if you don't think it's interesting, that's fine too.
We've actually had a couple people on the podcast, and you know, they've actually did speak about equity crowdfunding, because, you know, that is something that, you know, they saw was around the future. They saw that this was going to be a part of it. So now not only will you have, you know, a donation-based crowdfunding campaign, you know, where it's like a charity, or, you know, it's a perk-based, like you see, like most of them are on Kickstarter. But now, you know, Indiegogo is also, and a couple other sites too, like you mentioned. Oh, I just hit my mic. I talk with my hands a lot, Jeff. I'm I'm the only one person in the room right now, but I still talk with my hands, yep. like I'm a you know, low-level mobster. But yeah, like Indiegogo. You know, I have John Trigonis on, who's the head of the film crowdfunding campaigns on Indiegogo. You know, we were talking about equity as well. So it's just amazing, you know, all these different avenues that artists can take now.
Yeah, well, it's great for creators, and you know, I think it's great for the fans as well. I mean, we think that the Jobs Act has the potential to truly revolutionize a lot of different areas. You know, one is, in our case, I mean, our premise is really simple, right? We are using established business models that have been proven out over decades for film, television, VR. I guess you can't say that's been around for decades. That's a brand new business model that's evolving as we speak. But the point is, we're using proven, you know, business models to create content. And the twist, the thing that we're doing that's unique, is that we are owned by our fans. And what that means is that it means that fans have a chance to be involved with the process. It means that fans have the chance to engage with creators. And so we think that because of that, we can develop higher quality stuff, you know. But aside from that, the real advantage comes that when we go to release a movie or a television show or a VR adventure, we have a legion of fans that are already invested and are behind it. And we think that that is a fundamental difference, right? Content is king, and everybody always says that, but it's also a commodity these days because there's so much content out there vying for your attention, whether it's on Netflix or, network television or YouTube. I mean, there's more content than you could watch probably in a million lifetimes. And so having a legion of fans that are already invested and are going to go see the movie and are going to go get their friends and participate in it because they've been a part of it the way that you can with Kickstarter and that sort of stuff, has proven that works. That gives us a fundamental advantage in a very competitive industry. And so, I think that we are a prime example, and I think there's others that are like that. But I think when you step back and look at what's fundamentally changed, which is for the first time in history, if you have an idea for a small company, whether it's a technology company, an entertainment company, whatever, or a coffee shop, you can go out to your fans, you can go out to the general community and fund it that way. And like you said, it's not a donation. It's not just a rewards like you're going to get a coffee mug or something like that. The community can actually own it. And so I think for a lot of businesses, it really opens the door for people to do new and innovative and creative things.
I concur. And we were talking about building a fan base. I was actually just reading an article about Tim Ferriss. And, Tim Ferriss is the guy who did the 4-Hour Work Week and the 4-Hour Diet. There was this publisher that was on his podcast, and the hour after the podcast aired, this publisher had written a book about a couple years ago, and it was only one run of it, and whatever's out there is out there. And after this episode with Tim Ferriss ended, on Amazon, copies were now going for like $1,000 each because everyone was buying it up. And this publisher just said, he goes, Tim Ferriss's reach is absolutely unreal.
Yeah.
And he said whenever he talks about building a fan base, he goes, nobody does it like Tim Ferriss. And it's kind of reminds me of what we're doing, because you really do need to build up your own fan base. Like the 1,000 True Fans. I don't know if you heard that article, but that's sort of what you have to do now is you have to build your brand and just sort of get that email list and sort of make your own section of the internet. If you know what I mean.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And now, now your section of the internet has the ability to come together and make wonderful things happen. And whether that's a for-profit enterprise, or a social cause. I mean, the fact is you could have public companies, right? Because again, you think about it, the companies that people can invest in today, every single company that's out there that's public that you could go buy stock in today has had to go through a process that, starts with 3 guys or 2 guys working out of a garage or whatever it is, and ends with them having to run the gauntlet of Wall Street investment banks to get something to an IPO. And, with MobiTV, we actually took it to, we filed an S1 for an IPO. And so we saw firsthand how difficult that is, how expensive it is, and how, frankly, rigged it is. The people that make money on IPOs are not the guys that, not you and I and the people that are buying the stock. It's like the investment banks, and it's, all of the corporate insiders. And it's just, the whole thing is really crazy. But, so the point is every public company out there has had to run that gauntlet. And so the only ones that have been able to make through that gauntlet are ones that fit the exact same profile. But now that, guys like me or guys like you or any of your listeners could go out and create a company, it really opens the door for stuff. And it opens the door to companies that are not 100% focused on the bottom line, but also have some component of social good. It comes, works for businesses that are smaller in nature. I mean, one thing, if you look at like the profile of a typical, company that start off, they get seed investment, and they get a venture capitalist, and they get, to do their round A, and then they get a bunch of VCs for their B round, and then they do their C round, and then they go public. All of the people that are investing in those processes are looking for home run hits, right? Because the whole venture capital model is I'm going to invest in 10 companies and I know that 9 of them are going to fail. But I want to make sure that the one that is big enough generates enough return that it pays for the 9 that failed and makes me money on top of that. So they will only invest in your business if you've got that chance to be a unicorn, right? And to go public and to have this huge public valuation, which eliminates a lot of companies, right? If you're a small company and you've got a stable, great revenue, you've got customers that love you and you can run it profitably, but it's not going to be $1 billion company. It was a lot more difficult for you to get financing. But now if you've got customers, you can go out to your customers and say, hey, why don't you guys participate in this? We're all going to own a little bit of this. We can all make a little bit of money, and everybody wins. Or if your neighborhood, if you want to have a bakery in your neighborhood, the whole community can come together and say, hey, let's build this bakery. We're going to own this bakery. We're all going to eat at this bakery. We're going to benefit from the fact that we've got this amazing bakery in our neighborhood. And we also own it so that if it takes off and it becomes really profitable, we actually make money from that. It's a really novel, really revolutionary concept. And we're excited for it to happen. And we're excited to be a part of it.
Jeff, it reminds me of the TV show Silicon Valley. Which is hilarious because
that show. So, some of those jokes got a little too close.
It's kind of funny because like the main characters, they actually do want to make a good quality product, and then everybody's keeping like, no, we don't actually make a product. We just talk about it and we get our evaluation through the roof, and that's how we make our money. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And again, if you've never been in a company or if you've never, been in a startup or are part of kind of the culture, like, you may not realize, but that's so much of the way the world works and the way these companies, is driven by, it's greed, for lack of a better term. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's what allows, Facebook, for example, or Google. A lot of times you're allowed to, as a consumer, you get things for free because they're being financed, they're being bankrolled and paid for by venture capitalists and by investors that are willing to give you all of this amazing free stuff for now, on the hopes and on the assumption, that, well, not the assumption, but on the hopes that this company is going to make it and it's going to achieve some sort of, tipping point and they're going to be able to monetize it. So if you look at Facebook, like that's a great example. That would be a really hard company to, bankroll if you were like getting bank loans, for example, or something like that. The only way that would work is if you had venture capitalists that were willing to invest literally billions of dollars. Telecom networks are the same thing, right? We enjoy all this amazing wireless coverage everywhere we go. And it's because of the fact that you've got a venture capital industry that's willing to bankroll these companies and invest all this money so that you've got this infrastructure. And they do that in the early days when, like if you had to pay for the cost of a cell phone, when it first came out, nobody would have been able to afford it. It would have cost you like $1,000 a month and nobody ever would have signed up. But they bankrolled it with venture capital. That got the price down to $20 a month. Everybody's like, okay, I can sign up for that. And the next thing you know, that whole industry evolves. So venture capital plays a role. But it does. It creates a lot of really weird scenarios where companies are doing things specifically so they can get to kind of that next stage and they can, and the investors can liquidate their shares.
Yeah. That's why when I watch Silicon Valley, there's a lot of times where I've actually, been a part, like you said, been a part of startups. And some of that stuff is so true. Those meetings that go nowhere, meetings that you're there for an hour to discuss the next meeting. So it's like it's like a pre-meeting meeting. You're like, what the hell is this? And nothing ever goes anywhere and nobody has any power to do anything anyway. So it just, it's like wasting time. Yeah. But, that's why I think that show's phenomenal. Anyone, for everyone listening to this, I hope you watch Silicon Valley. It's on Sundays at 10:30. No, 10 o'clock. It's right after Game of Thrones. Yeah. So that's an awesome 1-2 punch.
It's a great show. I agree.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And anyone, like Office Space, I always recommend that because that's also by Mike Judge. Anyone who's ever worked in an office, they will absolutely love Office Space.
That's true. It's a classic.
Jeff, so we've been talking for about 45 minutes now. So Jeff, in closing, is there any sort of parting thoughts or anything you may have wanted to talk about we can get a chance to sort of put a period at the end of this entire conversation?
No. I mean, other than, like I said, please, if this sounds interesting to you, if you want to be part of this new fan revolution and take your spot in history, come, check out our website at thelegionm.com, and we'd love to hear your feedback, good, bad, or ugly. So. And
Jeff, where can people find you at online?
Well, our Twitter is Legion M Official. Our Facebook is just The Legion M. It's easy to find. And we're on Instagram as well, Legion M Official. Those are kind of our official things. And I Paul and myself and David, like the team, like we're the ones that are managing that. It's not, it's not interns. So if you see something there, it's coming from one of us.
Okay, cool. So, because I did interact with Legion M before, so I'm guessing it was one of you then. Because I actually was going to ask you if there was interns or whoever, I didn't know, but
not yet.
That's good to know.
You could probably use them. Like if you look at our social media presence right now, like it's not great. Yeah, I mean, it's very authentic because it's literally us answering it, but we're just not as good as, we probably could be as far as posting every day. And sometimes it can take a little bit of a lag time to get back to people, but it's just because it's us.
Yeah.
Are you looking for an internship? Because we could set something up.
Well, I am doing podcasting full time now.
Good for you, by the way. I think it's fantastic. I absolutely love podcasting, and it's such a great medium. And I wish you the best. If there's ever anything that we can do, certainly let us know.
Oh, I appreciate that, Jeff. Because I actually, so as my listeners know, in April of this year, at the beginning of April, I actually put in my 2 weeks of my job. I got burned out very quickly. And so now I'm focusing right now on doing this podcast. I actually am focused on my screenwriting as well. And, as I'm sitting, as I've been doing this, I actually have more people, telling me I should do, like a book or some kind of, online class like on Udemy or Skillshare. So, it's been like, I at least have some options. But, honestly, I'd love to talk to you more about, whatever I could do to help you guys, at any point in time.
Fantastic. Rock and roll.
Cool. Jeff, I want to say thank you very much for joining us, everyone. It's DaveBullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. Jeff, I want to wish you the best of luck with Legion M, and I look forward to hearing more about your about Legion M, in the coming months.
Absolutely. Well, let's stay in touch. I'd be happy to come back anytime you want.
Oh, that sounds like a plan, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.